Given the kind of voter turnout that was witnessed, a significant majority opted to boycott this particular election, and most of the banter that has been there, even on the social media, even the leaders themselves say they're being vindicated with this particular poll. So these are some of the things we will expect to be addressed in this particular press briefing that is expected any minute now. From the Okoa Kenya offices in Lavington here in Nairobi. Nandi leaders are expected to also give a briefing any minute now. Our reporter Elvis Koskei is on standby with that. Once they begin that address, we'll be crossing there live. They're led by the governor there, Stephen Sang, in that press briefing by Nandi leaders. We also expect something from the civil society in Kisumu. They're also expected to make an address in Kisumu today. We've seen a number of groups make an address. We've seen leaders, the clergy make an address. We've seen the LSK Kisumu branch also make an address condemning the use of excessive force on protesters in Kisumu. And of course, resisting the planned polls for the 4 counties, Kisumu among them, in Nyanza region. So we will be very keen to see what the civil society has to say about the whole election situation, and specifically with the spotlight on the 4 Nyanza counties in the country. All right, and let's now get back to the conversation as we wait for these press briefings to shape up. And once they begin speaking, whichever comes first, we'll be heading there straight. My guest once again in studio, Dr. Solomon Jenga, is a governance expert, as well as Richard Tuta, a security analyst. A lot is happening, and of course, from all those reactions, we will be seeing what NASA has to say, what the civil society has to say about the Kisumu situation, and of course, what the Nandi leaders have to say. But before we took a break and took it to the business team, a very interesting thought. You were talking about very interesting issues surrounding a dialogue in these 4 counties, specifically in this poll, because there's already a perception that it could be worse than it was yesterday in these 4 counties.
Agreed. I said this and I will repeat again, that it's very hard to convince people who are traumatized to go and vote. Voting is volunteer. Voting comes from the heart, not from the arm. And what the government has done, or rather what the police have done, is that they are trying to use force to intimidate. And we have seen that we have almost close to 2 million voters in the 4 counties. And I say this, I am not a prophet of doom, but I strongly believe that there might be no elections in the 4 counties tomorrow. One, even the church has come out strongly. And this is, we go back to governance and planning.
Yes.
Why didn't they plan IBC before?
Okay,
why didn't they foresee this?
I'll need to cut you shortly, just a bit, so that we listen to the leaders in Nandi County. I understand they've already begun making that address. So let's listen into that before we let the Daktari here finish his thoughts.
Repeat of the presidential elections in Nandi County. Ladies and gentlemen, one, we want to take this opportunity to thank the people of Nandi, the voters and residents of Nandi, for a wonderful job done yesterday. We had wonderful election. The voter turnout was impressive, despite the challenges, that we faced and the uncertainties that characterized this repeat presidential election. 2, the process was very peaceful, and the voting went on in a democratic manner. The results as they stand right now, we have concluded all, the tallying from all the 6 constituencies. And as we speak, we had a voter turnout of 66%. This is down from, the voter turnout that we had in the last general elections, the 8th of August election. And of course, this can be explained by a number of the challenges that we faced. However, in terms of votes, Uhuru Kenyatta got 228,779. In the last elections, Uhuru Kenyatta had 235,243. That means there is only a marginal drop of 7,000 votes. 7,000 votes, looking at the circumstances, we know a lot of our young men and women who study in the various universities did not manage to come in good time, and this is because of the uncertainties. You will remember that a day on the eve of the elections, we were still not very sure what was going to happen, and therefore people were not able to travel in good numbers. We have a number of our roads, getting to Nandi County from Kericho, from the Western Kenya side, that were blocked a day to the elections, and therefore we were not able to, the transport means was disturbed. Again, we had heavy rains across parts of Nandi County yesterday. That contributed a little bit also to the drop by 7,000. But we want to say that we are excited that across all this over 790 polling stations, all of them were opened in Nandi County. People came.
And the position is that they must stop ethnic profiling and genocide in Nyanza. Yesterday, the 26th of October 2017, Kenyans resisted ill-advised attempts by the Jubilee Party to impose a farcical election that has only exposed the country to ridicule and left the nation more divided than ever before. We wish to thank all our supporters who heeded our call to stay away from the discredited polls. We also thank Jubilee supporters who saw the charade for what it is and refused to be part of it. Kenyans boycotted the sham in Busia, Kilifi, Mombasa, Kitui, Kisii, Nyamira, Narok, Kajiado, Kitui, Makueni, Machakos, Wajir, Mandera, Garissa, Vihiga, Kakamega, Nairobi, Kisumu, Siaya, Migori, Bungoma, Homa Bay, Samburu, West Pokot, Turkana, and Trans Nzoia. The boycotts were particularly significant because they defied massive amounts of money and other sweeteners that Jubilee heavily invested in trying to buy voters, particularly in places like Nguni, Kivou, Mui, Waita, and Nu wards in Ukambani, and much of the Nyanza and coast regions. By staying away, we have all made the case that indeed we, the people, are sovereign. The citizens have finally opened the servers that the IEBC refused to open. The boycott has shown that the so-called numbers and percentages that Jubilee and Uhuru Kenyatta have been talking about were all along fraudulent. Uhuru lost elections in August. He has again lost this sham one, in which he was basically running against himself. Kenyans everywhere have overwhelmingly made a loud statement against Jubilee's electoral farce. We are profoundly concerned at state profiling of a part of our country with sinister, violent motives that could lead to a massacre of innocent people. We are concerned that the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission yesterday, 26th of October, postponed the Jubilee-enforced repeat presidential election in the 4 Nyanza counties of Migori, Homa Bay, Siaya, and Kisumu to tomorrow, the 28th of October 2017. The Commission cited insecurity as the reason for postponement, saying it would conduct the election after security has been beefed up. This is a wicked attempt at ethnic profiling of the Luo people. Beefing up security here is a euphemism for state preparation to unleash even more lethal force and state violence into these counties than has been witnessed in recent times. We are deeply concerned that Jubilee has now militarized elections. Conducting elections is now being used as an excuse and platform to commit genocide. This is well in line with this government's agenda against the people of these 4 counties. Following the Supreme Court's invalidation of the presidential election on September 1st, the state, through the Ministry of Interior and the National Police Service, has systematically profiled Luo Nyanza as an intransigent zone for the purpose of genocidal pogroms. It has gone on to subject the residents to state violence and terror in which precious lives have been lost. Under the pretext of quelling violence, the police, together with militias in police uniform, have brutalized the residents of the 4 counties. They have killed children, the aged, and other innocent people who are not even involved in the peaceful demonstrations against the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. In places like Migori and Bungoma, an official state of emergency appears to have been declared. We note with keen concern that armed and uniformed state agents are now breaking into homes and houses and flashing out innocent people for torture. People are not allowed to walk in formations of more than 2 persons. We are asking IEBC to call off the forced polls. The motive is clearly wicked and evil, and the entire process a sham. Beyond this, we are concerned that this state-sponsored violence is now spreading to engulf parts of West Kenya and Nairobi. We are perturbed about the mayhem in Bungoma today and the loss of life there earlier. Elsewhere, Regan Omondi Otieno was killed in Kariadudi Estate in Babadogo, Nairobi. Paul Omina was shot dead in Mathare North, and Joseph Onyango in Busia Town. He is currently undergoing treatment. 19-year-old Jojo Dhiambo was shot dead in Kondele in Kisumu. Whichever way you look at it, this government is unhappy that the people have rejected it. It has elected to fight back through violence, death, and mayhem. The so-called fresh elections in Luo Nyanza is only an excuse to massacre unarmed citizens. It is also instructive that this zone is largely a Seventh-day Adventist church region. We caution state agents against disrupting Christian worship through a meaningless election exercise, and even worse, violence. In the event that IEBC refuses to listen to wisdom and instead goes on with these meaningless forced polls, we advise the people not to walk into this trap of death. We call on the residents of these counties to stay away from the planned polls. End of statement.
If any questions?
My name is Ken. I work with NTV. Your statement reads like you are accusing the IBC of supporting the state in pushing for this agenda that you're saying, the genocide agenda. Are you accusing the IBC of supporting the state in this?
They are working hand in hand. People did not want to participate in the election. The same IEBC kept on telling people that if people don't want to vote, it is their constitutional right. And if people want to vote, they also are exercising their constitutional right. So the people of these counties have already shown in their first attempt that they do not want to vote. So why are they forcing it on them? And they're saying they want to have security beefed up so that they can force this election on them.
Any other question?
The IBC thereby accusing your supporters of having disrupted and stopped IBC officials from getting into polling stations by blockading roads and all that.
I can tell you that those are Kenyan citizens who are expressing their disapproval of what IBC is doing. And all along, IBC has operated as if Kenyans don't exist. So the Kenyans have been expressing to them that we don't want to participate on the vote. Don't force it on us. That's all.
Gachuri. Is Gachuri?
Time they're saying that they have an obligation, a constitutional obligation to make sure that election happens there. Otherwise, it would be a ground for opposition in the Supreme Court. How do you balance these two situations? One, your supporters' right not to participate in these elections, and at the same time, IEBC is insistent that it wants to comply with the Constitution, but it does not have the election.
Actually, it's not our duty to help the IEBC, because the IEBC knows very well that they have proceeded with an unconstitutional process. So we are not going to sanitize what they have done, and they should stop intimidating people, because they are the ones who know very well that they failed to follow the proper procedure.
Could you provide us with more detail of your justification for the use of the word genocide, please?
Well, in our statement, we have given specific names, and I can tell you that even now, if you go into the media and you watch what is going on in different parts of the country, the presence of police and the brutality that is being meted out to Kenyan people, houses being broken into, is very, very serious and alarming.
In your statement, you gave a list of some of the casualties, but you haven't given us details of how many people you believe have been killed by the security.
We don't have the numbers.
We may not be able to give you the numbers, but since the election was flouted, our estimate is that close to 70 people have died.
We're combining them.
Apart from this thing, these people who have died in the hands of the police, have been taken to the hands of the police. Is there any action that you are going to take against these civil officers?
Everything has its own time. The first thing we are trying to convey to our people at this point in time is that the forced repeat election tomorrow, we want to make sure that they are not injured, and we are telling them to stay away because they might walk into a trap where they will be injured. That is our priority. We don't want any lives to be lost.
There's a question there.
Point then does this political impasse come to an end? What is it that NASA wants to happen? Because the IEBC eventually will be declaring these results. What will NASA's next step be?
Well, we'll speak to that in a few days' time. Let me be very candid on that. But let's just put it this way, that in my statement, I did say something about the Kenyans finally opening the servers. It speaks volumes, because what it means that the voter turnout that has now been manifest, and you have all captured it across the country, and the tally that is coming through, then you ask yourself the fundamental question. If Jubilee had the 8 million plus votes, how could they lose their support of almost 4 million people within a space of 2 months? That's the fundamental question. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Nina swali na ni jambo ambalo pia viongozi wa Jubilee wamekuwa wakizungumzia kwamba ni sababu gani ambapo baadhi ya wafuasi wenu kutoka maeneo ya Nyanza ndio ambao huwa wakati mwingi wanaibua rabsha, na kuna wananchi kutoka kule maeneo ya Machakos, Mtoni na hata Pwani ambao hawakujitokeza kupiga kura.
Na Bungoma ni wapi?
Na athiriva jana
Bangladesh wamepiga watu huko.
Bwana, hiyo maswali
those are the questions, Prophet.
Yeah. That's a narrative that is being reinforced.
Just a minute. Just a minute.
Yeah, yani
Don't stop ethnic profiling. You are the ones who are being used by the state to do ethnic profiling.
It's NTV. We told them even yesterday.
NTV.
okay.
There's a final one.
Final one there.
Yeah, please.
And it seems tomorrow we said
Not now.
Too late.
Too late. That door is closed.
Well, all I can say at this point in time, that is Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta speaking. All right? And I cannot speak for him. Okay? So he is the one to elaborate what he means.
Yes, that's a good
We've seen a number of votes for NASA today. I believe that Mr. Odinga is second at the moment in share of votes.
We don't know.
The first thing is that Mr. Raila Odinga had, in the middle of October, had told them that he's not a candidate. They refused deliberately to remove his name from the ballot papers. So he was not a candidate. All right? So it's IEBC to explain to the Kenyan people where they managed or they insisted they wanted Mr. Raila's name on the ballot and he had pulled out.
Do you think that suggests foul play, or does it suggest just some of your supporters wanted to vote for him anyway?
I think the position is that IEBC has been exposed. They had planned to do what they did on the 8th of August, and with Mr. Raila Odinga pulling out of the race, their game has been exposed, and they do not know what to do in order to try and sanitize their flawed process.
Okay. So.
It was a shame, honorable members. Okay. The NASA press briefing there addressed by one of the principals, Musalia Mudavadi, just ending at the Okoa Kenya offices in Lavington, majorly talking about the fresh election that has been scheduled for tomorrow for the 4 counties in Nyanza region, the counties which are Siaya, Kisumu, Migori, and Homa Bay, asking the residents in all the 4 counties to stay away from the polling stations, to stay at home and not show up to vote in what they term as a continued sham election, alleging that this is a plan by the Jubilee government to massacre the people of Nyanza and commit all manners of atrocities against them. And they're urging their supporters there not to walk into that trap, but instead stay at home and not participate in any way in this particular poll. That particular briefing addressed by Musalia Mudavadi, they've also raised questions on the excessive force that the police are using on protesters, saying that this was meant to profile the Luo community, but from the latest developments that we've had, this is spreading to other counties, like in Western region, specifically in Busia and Bungoma, as well as Kakamega, and in Nairobi. They've gone ahead to name or to give the names of those who've died in this particular protest or this particular election process since yesterday, saying that their death was as a result of excessive use of force by police officers, asking supporters that from this particular situation and a pattern that they say has been established, they should not show up. They should just stay home and not participate in this particular election. And I would want my guests here in studio to react to that particular statement there by Musalia Mudavadi. I think I'll start with you, Richard.
You see, Akisa, all these, what has been raised by NASA, there are things that cannot just be wished away, or you wash them away and you say that all that what they have said are just mere allegations. Even if they are allegations, they have mentioned names of people who have succumbed as a result of the alleged police brutality. Remember, Akisa, we live in a country that is guided by a rule of law. The rule of law is a requirement by both the civilian and the police. And as I said in the beginning, the police core mandate is to apprehend criminals, not to condemn and punish them. So what needs now to be done? Let the police themselves know that they don't have a blank check when it comes to dealing with both rioters, demonstrators, or criminals. That is a preserve of the judiciary. So these are cases that need to be investigated. Let the police know that as far as these actions are concerned, they can run but they cannot hide. And let also the criminals and the rioters also know that at some point they can be called upon or they can be made to account for their actions.
Okay.
Because this is why we have the Directorate of Criminal Investigation to apprehend and to investigate some of these things. But for the police, this is why the Constitution have created various bodies. There is one of the body that has been created by the Constitution is the IPOA. There is the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. There is an internal affairs unit of the police. Let Kenyans see actions being taken. Because the problem that we have been having is we have talked for a long time and nothing is being seen to be done. And the moment nothing is being seen to be done, that's why the credibility of the police on the side of the civilian is coming down. And any time now, in some of these areas that have been mentioned by NASA, they may arrive at a situation that any time they see a police, they see a killing machine, which is very wrong.
But
and that is not how it should be.
But then, Dr. Njenga, is it in order for a leader of the stature of Musalia Mudavadi, and this is some of the reactions I'm seeing here on social media, to come out and say that it is a ploy to massacre people? Doesn't it make the situation that is already volatile worse?
I will say this. Every leader wants to pull on their end to justify no matter what, and to demonize the other side. I won't talk about Musalia Mudavadi, like the Twitter and internet people are saying, but I want to specifically talk about God is the only one who can take, the police are not justified to take anyone's life. Someone has lost Hassan on this demonstration. Someone has lost the loved one. And that is something that the government should also be concerned about. I will also want to advise the demonstrators to really also restrain themselves. Because, kwa Kiswahili wanasema ya kwamba farasi wanapopigana,
fahali wawili. Nyasi ndio huumia.
Thank you. And really, I would want to advise the Nyanza people that keep off violence. Violence begets violence. There is no way violence can beget peace. And you see, police are trained to counter violence. And I wish there is no, even NASA cannot justify that the police are killing, and yet we also have casualties on the side of the police. We have evidence, we have reports that we have lost some, some of them are in hospitals. And who is the spokesman of police? We are hearing a deafening silence on that. Concerning blockage of roads, really, I would also want the NASA people and also the government Uhuru Kenyatta to raise up the alarm and restrain their sides. If it's Uhuru Kenyatta, to restrain the police. If it's NASA, to restrain their people.
I think, Akisa, what we expect on the part of any law enforcement is whereby we expect to see more arrests than people being rushed by ambulances into hospital. We expect to see more people being arraigned in court, as opposed to a situation whereby we are seeing cases like, for instance, that which you were just treated to by your senior political reporter somewhere in Migori. These are the cases that we may want. But let us also ask ourselves that, just like the way that Taria said, that from the part of the demonstrators, let them also restrain themselves. Let them also say, fine, there are other mechanisms as opposed to the use of violence.
Agreed.
But sometimes I do ask myself, when it comes to the degree of proportionality, the use of force, because the use of force is determined by the degree of proportionality. Does a person with a stone, a person carrying a stone, justify a use of a live bullet?
Okay.
Those are the questions that we need.
All right, and to just keep you up to date with what you're seeing on your screen, live pictures there from Bungoma. Tension continues to build after one person was killed or shot dead by police officers earlier on in the day when police officers were engaged in running battles with rioting youth there. And it seems that the situation has continued to be tensed. A contingent of police officers have been sent down to Bungoma. We've already seen reactions from Senate Speaker, who's the former governor of the county, Ken Lusaka, as well as the current governor, Wycliffe Wangamati, reacting to that particular situation. This seemingly not the only place where tension is building up in the country. Migori continues to be the same situation since what we saw yesterday. We've had events where calm has been restored, but currently we understand that tension has continued to build up in Migori as well. And those are live pictures you are seeing from Bungoma. We'll shortly be going to Migori, where our political affairs editor, Ben Kitili, is on standby. Here in Nairobi, the situation is the same in Kawangware area. Trix Ngado will be telling us that shortly. But first, let's speak to Ben Kitili and see how the situation is in Migori. Ben, you talk about tension once again rising in that area. Earlier on, there was seemingly calm was being restored. What has happened in between that?
Akisa, what has happened in the last 2 hours is that the police, the anti-riot police in this town, have been able to disperse the demonstrators and remove them completely from the streets. Today, it started as a calm day here in Migori. Calm was beginning to return, and the normal, the buzzing nature of this town was beginning to come back. But since 2 hours ago, when police came into this place with a lot of force and obviously more numbers than we have seen in the last 2 days. It is a ghost town, Akisa, as you can see from our live pictures here. It's only police who are patrolling the streets, and what they've been doing in the last 2 hours, they've gone off the streets. They've been going into the residential areas inside of Migori, trying to, get to people who they say they are looking for, the demonstrators who have been blocking the roads. We have been hearing gunfire all along Akisa. A lot of tear gas canisters have been lobbed into those residential areas inside on this area, and we have a report of one person that has been shot and has been taken to the Oruba nursing home, just like a kilometer from where I am. We are going to go there to try and verify that. Those are reports we've been able to get. We haven't verified that report of that person that has been shot. But what is happening is the police are now, we don't have the same number of police like we had 2 hours ago. We have like a lorry or two of the anti-riot police. The rest have been dispatched into the residential areas here in Migori to try and restore calm. That is the latest here, Akisa. It is a ghost town. Nobody on the streets. Nobody dares walk on the streets. Everybody that is being met by the police, they've been told, they've been rounded up and told to go help, remove the stones and the boulders from the road blockades that have been put by the demonstrators. That is what's happening. People have closed down their businesses. People seemingly scared to come out of their houses. But what we understand is that the security agents are trying to secure this place. Remember, Migori being one of those 4 counties alongside Kisumu, Siaya, and Homa Bay, that election are set to be held tomorrow. We've just had that statement by the National Super Alliance leaders. People say, they insist, Akisa, that there will be no voting here. They say no amount of tear gas or gunshots will scare them. They say they will not allow IEBC to move the election materials. But there is a lot of police officers on the streets, more than we have seen in the last 2 or 3 days, Akisa.
Ben Kizile, from what you are describing there and from what we've seen from that particular press briefing from NASA leaders, they say that some areas have seemingly, there has been a declaration of a state of emergency in some areas. One of those that they've mentioned is Migori County. Is that how you would describe the situation currently in that particular county, as that of an unofficial, quote-unquote, state of emergency? All right, we'll be posing that question later on to Ben Kitile to just get a feel of what the situation is like in Migori, but he describes it as a ghost town. Everyone has fled to their homes. Police ransacking a number of them to just try and look for those